As we gather for this meeting on the budget, we call upon our Creator to be with us and to surround us with people who care and inspire us all to make the right decisions. Amen.
Amen. Supervisor Robel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move for the approval of today's adopted agenda.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on anything on the agenda this morning? Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on anything from the public this morning? Seeing not, that portion of the meeting will be closed. I didn't see you pop in here. Okay, Mr. Harris, you're up.
I believe we left off ready to do child support, page 345. Child support is budgeted for 23 full-time positions. That's 2 positions above where they were budgeted last year. Child support is a department who generally has very little or no levy in their budget. They're supported by state and federal monies. Their summary of significant changes is on page 347. And if you look at their levy page, you'll see that they actually are shown with a negative levy amount. And what that represents is they do draw on services from other parts of the county, and they get reimbursements of state and federal money for services drawn on other parts of the county. So that in effect gives them a negative levy amount.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a question about the 2 additional people. It's my understanding in the child support group that basically what we're doing is trying to find paternity, deadbeat spouses and so forth. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the number of non-custodial parents is growing at a rapid rate, as everyone knows.
Okay, so these 2 people will be primarily looking at that?
They will be working in that process. One would be an attorney to help with the legal filings.
Okay.
So turn off that middle light there so it don't go on. Supervisor Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked this question at committee, and I guess I'll raise it just so that everyone can hear the answers. The first question I had asked was how many counties out of the 72 in Wisconsin have an attorney as a director? I don't know if you're familiar with the answer to that, but it's 8. So 8 out of 72 have an attorney as a director. And if you look at counties our size, 3. Us, Winnebago, I believe it's Dane and Kenosha. And I guess my concern there is, do we need a second attorney? Or do we need someone as a director who's not an attorney and let the attorney do the work that has to be done?
Well, Kathleen Dietrich is in the back of the room. She's the head of that department. She might know what other child support enforcement departments do that don't have an attorney as a director. It could be that they have that they're utilizing their corporate counsel, or that they're drawing on a contracted attorney. I don't know, but she's in the back of the room and might be able to help us with these questions.
Good morning. I could answer the question with regard to an attorney as a director. I'm the only director attorney that does all the jobs. I know that other counties have attorney directors, but they also have assistant court counsels that go to court. It's good to have a legal background with regard to director, because you understand what needs to be done in the court as well as what the state requires you to do. There's always the possibility of having an attorney. Our size, there's at least 3 attorneys involved. I'm in court about 20-plus hours a week. Makes it difficult to be involved in the board meetings and the state meetings that happen in progressive child support agency policies.
I guess that's kind of my point. If half or more of your time is being spent as an attorney, perhaps somebody else should be director?
Well,
And I bring this up only because the lady that you brought to committee with you, I believe her name was Mary,
correct.
appears to be very, very qualified, having worked for the state in a similar capacity, and I think been in this type of business for 20-some years. No disrespect to you whatsoever, absolutely. But I'm just wondering whether or not we have to spend the money for another attorney, or could it be a person added, but someone, I'll say, of less stature?
Well, our department is fully funded. It is fully funded through 66% of our administrative costs are paid through the federal government, and then we get incentive funding that is matched by any state. GPR is matched by the federal government. So, and we're fully funded this year. The state is giving us $8.5 million for the child support agency. Anything that is not spent in the child support agency goes back to the state.
One last comment. It just so bothers me when I hear answers from anyone that says, well, it's not on the county tax levy. You know, it comes from the state, or it comes from the federal government. The last time I checked, I paid taxes to both those entities, too. Thank you.
Okay, there are no other questions at this time, or?
Parkview Health Center starts on page 418. They're budgeted, the FTE count in Parkview Health Center is a little different, where they're, in some cases, part-time FTEs are combined and reported as a whole FTE. And I don't think it's the ideal way to report it, but it's consistent with prior years, so it leaves it more comparable. But they're shown as having 216 full-time employees and 9 part-time positions for a total of 225. And that was on page 422. The Morgan Hinckley is in the back, and she can help me answer any questions you might have. Their summary of significant changes is on page 424 and 425. And this year's levy amount has decreased, but you have to understand that we're applying a substantial amount of reserves. Parkview has its own separate reserve. And when Chuck and I reviewed that reserve, we felt it was appropriate to apply a small portion of that reserve to this year's budget. It's sort of the opposite of what happened with highway, where we felt we had to stop applying a highway reserve to county road maintenance. In this case, the reserve had built up to such an extent that we felt it was appropriate to apply some. So the amount of levy in this department is dropping from $7,135,000 down to $5,780,000. But that's largely because of the application of the reserve.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just commenting for the benefit of the newly appointed and elected supervisors. I've been long a critic of our healthcare accommodations that our facility, which now consumes 8.88% of the levy. So you've got a little bit less than 10 cents of every dollar collected on your taxes is going to take care of 168 residents of Parkview, and they are accommodated with $37,000 bathrooms. That's something that I hotly contested when the building was under construction. But each one of those 168 rooms has a bathroom that costs $37,000 to construct. And I just consider the new members of the board a little better educated.
I agree somewhat with your concerns, but I think that's your main function of this board, to take care of the elderly, to take care of the sick and the poor. That's what our main function is, not for a lot of these other glorious things that we spend millions and millions of dollars on. Parkview was always one of the best respected things in Winnebago County and still is. I would hate to see anything ever happen to it because that's our responsibility to take care of the elderly. Supervisor Singstock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Chuck. Chuck, on page 422, there's a graph showing that the actual and the projected decrease in the tax levy has been down for 7 years, which is very impressive. My question is any of those years, is it decreased mainly because of dipping into the fund balance, or is it all from operating efficiency?
Okay. Primarily, it's efficiencies.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I promised myself I wasn't going to talk today to keep my blood pressure down, but when I hear these insidious comments about Parkview, it riles me. It seems to me that the role of government, the two main roles of government, are public safety and public health. And taking care of the frail elderly is second to none, in my view, in this budget. Someone a long time ago told me that a budget is a set of priorities with numbers attached. What does it say about our board if we have more concern for a parking lot, a cell phone, and other things rather than real people? Yes, question, but view what takes place out there. These people are taken care of in a way that is respectful, and they have a wonderful life. And, I hope I can get a room there sometime. I'll even sleep outside. The place is great. I welcome you all to come to Parkview unannounced someday and just see what goes on there with the people. See the enthusiasm of the workers there. I can say this with some knowledge. Many of them tell you that they aren't there for the money. They just love helping people. And so I just had to speak up. And we're also very fortunate to have Morgan And Tom Geske also always goes unnoticed. But he has one of the sharpest pens of any accountant or money guy in the county. Nothing gets by him. Over the period of years that I've been on that committee, he's taken over jobs that other people held because he cares that much about the taxpayers of Winnebago County. The money we spend at Parkview is money well spent, and the people deserve nothing but the best. Thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just kind of want to piggyback onto Supervisor Wingren's comments too, and I'd like to commend Morgan and Tom and all their staff there for running that facility very efficiently and keeping the tax levies for the last 6 years and even for next year down where they are now. So I think they're doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's not much I can add to what Supervisor Wingren said, so I'd just like to say ditto, and I certainly support Parkview. Thank you.
Okay, you're off the hook.
The Parks budget is on page 461, and there's also a boat launch budget on page 473. The Parks Department is budgeted for 6 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees, the same as last year. The list of significant changes is on page 466. And the adopted budget for 2013 was $1,205,000, and the executive proposed budget for 2014 is $1,249,000. Rob Way, the director of the Parks Department, is in the back.
Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rob, I assume you're aware of a resolution to approve $150,000 for the building of a storage facility on the Expo Center property. Are you, sir?
I am.
When that resolution was presented, the question came up afterwards about whether or not you were aware of that resolution and whether or not you had basically said, well, it would be okay to put that on the Expo Center property, which is kind of under the jurisdiction of Parks. That's the general understanding. What's your position on that for clarification?
It has been and continues to be that the location of that building would not cause a problem on the Expo site, and I have done up a map actually that I've shared with Chris in extension showing where it would be located. As far as from an operational standpoint, if it reflected what was done with the older garage that they've been using, if that's the same type of use, that it would not cause any sort of conflict with the Parks Department or Expo programming.
And what kind of an agreement would your department and Extension and, of course, the Fair Association, a non-county committee or department, have in regard to that building? Would that be verbal, written, as far as the use of the building?
In talking with Chris about it, we envisioned that it would be reflected in a document that we have worked on through the years that the Extension Committee and the Parks Committee would be familiar with. It's typically an attachment on the back side of the 4-H contracts, in which we put in guidelines for how we interact with 4-H, where we pick up and leave off with how they deal with their programming, setting the parameters, basically. So we envision that that same type of relationship would be put in writing and put into that document, and put in front of the two committees as it is typically done whenever it's adjusted for approval.
Thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you. My question's been answered.
Okay, there are no other questions.
The next budget will be University Extension. Chris Kniep is in the back of the...
Tom Widener will do the UW Fox Valley because they can't make it.
So we'll go on then to UW Fox Valley on page 437.
Well, he can't get his hearing aids to work, so we'll go to back to the other one first.
Yeah, we'll jump back to UW Extension. Chris Kniep is in the back of the room. Extension is budgeted for 9 full-time positions. I'm on page 453. It's probably 451 or something that it starts. But it's 9 full-time positions. One of the unique aspects of Extension is that some of the positions are funded by the state or partially funded by the state, and then the support staff is funded by the county. So the staff report in the book is the portion of the Extension staff that's supported by the county. Their summary of significant changes is on page 454.
Would you explain to the board, I was asked the question yesterday about the percentage of wages, how that works?
Chris is in the back, and I believe it's a 50-50 sharing, but she'd do a better job, I think, of describing the splitting of the state-supported employees' costs.
Surely. If you take a look at the staff chart on page 449, you'll see the community resource development educator, agriculture educator, 4-H youth development educator, and myself. And that's a 40-60 split between the county and the state, with 40% of our salary and fringe benefits from the county and 60% from the state. And then as you go across that chart, the basin educator in the nutrition program, that's 100% state federal funding. The secretarial positions, fully county funded. And then the 3 positions at the bottom, the horticulture educator, family living educator, and youth science educator, those are 100% county.
Thank you. There's no questions.
Next, we'll go to page 437, which is UW Extension. As you'll recall, UW Extension, UW Fox Valley, and UW Fox Valley is supported by a variety of sources. The state provides all the operating funds to employ instructors, maintenance workers, everything. But Winnebago County and Outagamie County are partners in sponsoring that institution, and you have to have a local government sponsor to get a 2-year institution in your area. And so all the building costs and building maintenance costs are split evenly between Outagamie County and Winnebago County. Tom Widener will help me answer any questions with regard to that department, but the summary of significant changes is on page 442. And in 2013, we budgeted for $153,532 of levy, and that's the same amount that we're budgeting for 2014. Usually the large dollars that are spent in this area come about as a result of the board supporting a capital project.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the executive mentioned, Dr. Rudd and Jim Egan are not able to be here this morning, so I will try to answer any questions, and I hope that the downgrade is not too obvious. But any questions, I'll try.
Well, you're the center of attention. It's lighting up. Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a hopefully simplistic question. I'm looking at page 442, and as we go down, we look and we find capital improvements. That shows an increase based on shifting expenses. So we're doing a little playing with the books there, I think. From maintenance buildings to capital. Can you give me a little more detail on that? What's going on there?
Okay, we were told to move that item from expenses into the I want to say capital. That was the instructions we were given.
What item are we referring to?
I apologize. I'm really having trouble with the hearing aids today. So
maybe Chuck could answer that. Are we talking about a boiler or something, or?
My mic. Okay. In some of the past years, more of their focus has been on maintenance type projects, which don't really have a extended life where you could depreciate them. Versus in the current year, they're proposing more projects that would be capitalized and depreciated. For instance, on page 446, they've got there's a list there of the different items. Those are all capital outlay items, not really repair items. So they're just shifting their focus from doing maintenance to doing more capital type items.
So the $83,000 is part of the $107,000 on page 446? Which would include mower replacement, I see.
Yeah. And the line right below that, the $23,608 is part of that.
What is the criteria for capital improvement?
It has to have a life.
5-year life expectancy?
5-year life.
5-year life?
Some of them are 3. For instance, police squad cars are a capital expenditure, but they only have a 3-year useful life. So it depends on the asset. A building can have a 50-year life.
In this case, we're referring to a 5-year life.
I have to look at the items.
We have gates, entrance
Well,
steps.
the gates are probably 10. I would guess the exit entrance steps are probably 10 or 15. Turf maintenance mower is probably about 7-year life. Water conditioning unit, that might be 5. It really depends on the asset. You have to look at it and determine, what category does it fit into. Does it fit into something that would typically have a 5-year life, a 7-year life? It's an accounting estimate or judgment decision.
Thank you.
So now where we share that expense with Winnebago County, that's half of that, or that's?
Yeah, that's my question.
This is
Where
the
are we going
total
with this?
amount. The items of revenue and expenses are primarily totals, but what you'll see in their budget is a line item. I got to get there. On page. I'm on the wrong one. Bear with me a second. Yeah, the cost sharing allocation line represents half of the total budget. So if you look at their total, if you look at their total budget, it would be double that, and then we bill back Outagamie County for half. So you see our net levy is $153,005, and you'll see on that cost sharing revenue line a revenue of $153,005. That's on page 442. So basically, they reimburse us for half of the costs.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Professor Widener, what is the status of the engineering building? Are we done with the actual repair, update, upgrades, and all? And I really, applaud the program. I think it's filling a great need in our county.
Okay, the answer is yes, we are done with the engineering building. We should see no more cost for that, except for normal maintenance. As far as the getting more people involved in the engineering, which we also share with the degree for those who have not been here, is a person can stay at Fox Valley, and we have professors coming in from Platteville that teach the engineering so that people can get an engineering degree without leaving Fox Valley, a Platteville degree. And basically what those people are, most of those people are coming back for a second degree or to get their first degree and then stay in the area, which is a problem that we had in the past. So, so far the answer is yes, we are done, but yes, we are also improving or increasing the number of people going through. And Supervisor Wingren, I hope that I have answered your question.
You have, sir.
Okay.
I just want to add real quick, they now have 2 different engineering programs there. 2 different programs.
Mechanical and electrical.
Yeah, so both mechanical and electrical engineering, and they really are meeting the need of some employers in this area for engineers, because if you have to recruit them from some of the larger schools, it's difficult to get them to come to this area. The next budget we'll do is a Register of Deeds. Julie Pagel is in the back. The Register of Deeds office is a profit center and not a cost center. Start on page 4. It's getting harder to read the numbers. 487. Yeah. Should pull these out. They are budgeted for 7 full-time employees, the same as last year. That the summary of significant changes is on page 489. And this year, their revenues will exceed expenses by $442,000, slightly more than they were budgeted for 2013.
Well, I guess the only questions we can really ask, can we divert some of that money over to the airport, seeing they're nonprofit, and to some other organizations? Okay, there are no other questions. You're off the hook.
Let's jump ahead to county board on page 532. Dave Albrecht, the county board chairman, is here.
Don't worry, I'll get even.
You have no employees in the county board budget. The summary
Mr. Eisen, would you tell the board how many employees that Outagamie County has? Never mind. Supervisor Wingren.
No, thank you.
I was going to say that the summary of significant changes is on page 538. There is a item in the budget for a compensation study. And the levy for this area was budgeted in 2013 for $386,787. This budget is budgeted for a decrease down to $372,068.
Supervisor Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the travel portion of the board budget, I know that during the opening comments section of some of our meetings, we do get a few sporadic reports. I guess without mentioning names, we do have one supervisor who does provide updates from some of the meetings that he attends, and I don't know if some of those are paid travel or whatnot. But I'm just curious, looking at especially the registration, tuition, commercial travel, and meals portion, seeing the dramatic jump in the 2013 budget. First of all, did we spend all of what was budgeted for last year?
No, there's still some money left in them. But one of the things, like the counties association paid for a large group of people, new members to go, and next year they won't be paying for that. So I added in some for education. When I first took this job, I was against the money we were spending on education, but wait till they're done. As I see there's a need for education because we have so many new people, and that's why there's an increase in it. But the big thing is the counties association saved us quite a bit of money this year by not charging us for new members, but they tell me that that's going to end this year.
And just to take that one step further, I certainly agree with educating the new members of the board, whatever that's incorporated.
To finish answering your question, there are several members that faithfully hand in reports on where they were and what they did. I guess I should be more proactive and see that they get in our packets to what they've learned and what they did. There's all different ways that people are informing me what they learned and what they did. But no, that can be addressed further to what there are some of them that give reports right along. I just don't forward them all on right away.
Right. For example, I know in recent history, I recall a report from one of our colleagues who went out to Washington, D.C. for something. In more recent memory, I've heard some members went, or a member at least went to Dallas for something, and that was not a new member, I don't believe, who was going somewhere for an educational purpose. So I'm just curious to know if we're not hearing a report from those types of things, what are we getting as far as a benefit to the taxpayers of Winnebago County for having those types of trips taken?
I know that for a fact that almost every one of them that goes someplace out of state comes back and reports to the department what they've learned and what they did and brings them information back. I guess that I'm kind of laxed on seeing that the board gets all that information, but I would have to see that I follow through with doing that.
So do you foresee that, what you've asked for and what's in the executive's budget is justified in your mind? I mean, obviously you said you were against this early on in your career, you're for it for the educational purpose, but based on the questions I'm asking, do you really feel that that's justified?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you notice I'm giving everybody an extra moment?
The next budget item is solid waste on page 590. John Robbie is in the back of the room. Solid waste is a department that's not on the tax levy. They're funded with tipping fees from communities and companies that landfill waste, and they're part of a consortium with 2 other counties. They currently are budgeted for 16 employees, the same as 2013. And I'm sure John can help me answer any questions.
Supervisor Wingren.
Yes. When I drive by the landfill, I see that, am I correct in assuming no more material is going in there?
There is, and John can answer in a minute, but we're still filling paper sludge into one of the cells.
Yes, that's correct. We have 2 separate landfill sites at the Sunnyview location. One is a co-disposal landfill, and that's the one that closed in 2012. 2013, we spent putting the final cover on the site, but the sludge portion of the landfill is still open. So we're still taking paper mill sludge from some customers in the Fox Valley.
Because over the years prior to that, you drive by and there'd be all this paper blowing around, and by the next day it was spotless. I commend the people for taking great. I wouldn't want one of those in my backyard, but maybe it wouldn't be so bad at a future skiing hill. So congratulations and thank you for the efforts.
Yeah, thank you.
Could you give them a little update on recycling fees? Like, I believe the city of Oshkosh is raising recycling fees or something. Could you tell them what that's about?
Well, as part of this budget, we're keeping our recycling tip fee the same for 2014. But there was an article in the Northwestern a month or so ago that the city of Oshkosh is considering adding a user fee to help offset some of the costs associated with collection of recyclables. Our recycling program, basically, we accept recyclables, we ship them to our Tri-County facility in Outagamie County, we sort, and then sell the commodities. They help offset the processing costs, but over the last couple of years, we've seen a little bit of a downturn in the commodity pricing. So the amount of monies that we're able to rebate back to the communities has been lessened, and it's basically a function of more of the global commodity markets. So.
The other factor that's causing municipalities to complain, the other factor causing municipalities to complain is that they get less in recycling grant monies from the state. So the combination of a smaller rebate from us, because the market prices on the recyclable commodities are down, together with less grant money, has hit their budgets pretty hard.
Correct.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've long been an advocate for integrating the Solid Waste Department and the Solid Waste Management Board into the county budget. As you can see, the Solid Waste Department is listed as an appendage to the budget, and in spite of the fact that there are 24 employees of the department, those employees are county employees. They're hired by the Human Resources Department, but they're not counted as a county employee. They're part of the health insurance, and I would advocate that when we go back and look at the organization chart, way back at the beginning of the budget, which is on one of the introductory first pages, that we consider having a slot to identify the solid waste department, because if you go into the comprehensive annual financial report of the county, you will find that there is millions of dollars that are part of the county, part of the solid waste department, that ought to be recognized in the budget, as well as just being an appendage.
Supervisor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. Probably the answer is obvious, but it's not obvious to me. Every time I drive past the landfill, I see that gas that's being flared off, and I understand, I think quite well that a lot of times something that looks like a great idea is not economically feasible. But has there been any thought at all or any inquiries at all for persons or organizations, businesses that might want to recycle all that gas that's being flared off every day? We could even give it to some entrepreneur for nothing and at least feel good about it not being wasted. Again, technology is not something I know much about. It may not be economically feasible, but I just wonder if there have been any inquiries at all about putting that waste gas to any good use.
Well, we have to collect all the landfill gas from the Sunnyview site and destroy it in some manner. We currently have 5 engine generators that we run on landfill gas and generate electricity. But you always need to have some other technology for the excess gas. Right now, from the Sunnyview site, we're obviously generating more gas than we're able to use in the 5 engine generators. We were talking about potentially adding a 6th engine at one point in time. This was several years ago, but we've run into some air permitting complications and have pretty much settled on 5. Now that the co-disposal site is capped, at some point here we're going to start to see a drop-off of gas production from the site, now that we're keeping more of the moisture out. And so the gas produced, what we'll need to flare will be lessened over time. But, the engines, we have 5 of them. They use a quantity of gas, so it'll be a little bit of a challenge to balance, what we're able to burn in the engines, and we're going to always have to flare the excess because we have to we have to collect what the site is generating, and I think long-term, at this point in time, the flare is our best option.
Thank you.
Could you tell the board about the amount of money we receive for the gas that we sell?
Sure. For 2012, we received a little over $3 million in power sales from Wisconsin Public Service, from the generation facilities. For 2013, we're running at a pace, if everything continues to hold together for the next couple months, we'll be right in that same ballpark, about $3 million in power sales revenues.
Then, in your judgment, then a sixth generator would not pay for itself. I just kind of wish that somebody would study that a little bit more. Even if the gas production will go down, perhaps a sixth generator could pay for itself. I don't know that, but I'd like it looked at.
The problem is getting the air permits from the DNR takes a really long time. So even when you want to add another generator, it may take a year to get permission to locate it. So
there's more pollution from using the gas in your generator than flaring it off?
No,
just
more bureaucracy.
That's easy to believe.
But we also, just to give them credit for all the innovative things they've done, they also use some landfill gas in heating the highway department. Gas for heating the highway department. At the jail, they have a generator position near the jail that converts the gas to electricity. But the generators run really hot because they operate 24/7. The waste heat from the generator is captured to heat hot water. And when it's working right, we also have forget what you call it, an energy converter or something that can produce some air conditioning by the capture of waste heat. Don't understand it, but I know that it works.
No, I commend the people for doing what they are doing, and I'm simply questioning whether a little bit more could be. I think I've had good answers, and I appreciate them.
Thank you. Supervisor Warnke.
I was just kind of wondering, how long is it going to be before we're going to let the kids slide down the hill over there?
That's a very good question. I think we're focusing, the Solid Waste Management Board is focusing on the long-term end use of both sites. We have a closed site at the Snell Road site on Walter Street. That's been closed for over 20 years. That would be the first site we would look at, creating some sort of public type space, working with our Parks Department for long-term outdoor type use. The Sunnyview site just being closed, number of gas wells, a lot of monitoring that's going to take place, a lot of gas generation. That's something we'll have to look at a little further down the road. We have a 40-year long-term care period, and you're probably looking at something out in that range of time before public access to that site would be.
I mean, it's a beautiful view up on top there for those who've been there. You can see all the way across the lake.
Yes, it is. It's a beautiful view up there. So.
Okay, thank you. He will be given a presentation in the next couple months. We'll have him on our agenda.
The next budget area is on page 494, planning. Jerry Bougie, the head of that department, is in the back of the room, and he also covers two other budgets, the tax lister's budget on 507 and the land records budget on page 512 are all under Jerry Bougie. With regard to the planning department, they're budgeted for 13 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee, the same as last year. The list of significant changes is on page 500. And the tax levy is increasing from last year's $656,063 to $674,765.
just giving them a chance to look.
Sure.
It's getting at the end of the pages, and they probably never.
Yeah,
get there.
those pages were 494 for the start of the planning, 507 for the property tax lister, and 512 for land records modernization.
Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As long as Mr. Bougie has taken the time to come over, and that, would you take a minute, sir, and tell this board the current status of our farmland preservation application and position? While everybody's looking through your money side of this, would you do that? I appreciate that if you would.
Sure. Farmland preservation. It's a, first of all, mandated program by the state. All counties are required to do farmland preservation. We had our farmland preservation plan certified in 2012. We are in the process of getting our zoning ordinance certified by the state at the present time. There are a number of towns with their own zoning. They're also in the process of getting their zoning ordinances certified by the state for farmland preservation. Those zoning ordinances do need to match the county plan that's been certified. There is that certification for the county plan was a 5-year certification which expires in 2017. So we will need to update and get that plan recertified. We'll probably start that process in about 2015. So this is an ongoing process. We have submitted our zoning ordinance to the state for certification. We are awaiting word back from the state on the certification for the zoning ordinance. So that's the status of it.
Do you have, this has been an ongoing process for multiple years. Do you have an idea of how much time county staff has used to address the state requirement? Or
well, I do have that information. In the office, we had to do some reporting for the state provided some grant dollars for that process. What those numbers are standing here, I couldn't tell you, but when that process was going on, it required a lot of staff time. But what those numbers are, Mr. Fari, offhand, I'm a little unclear. But I do have those numbers back in the office.
I am aware of the expertise of your GIS personnel and the help that they've provided to the town. So just that area alone, I expect, is a lot of time consumed.
It is, and it's ongoing. It's on. This process hasn't ended, as you mentioned.
Well, it's very much appreciated by the town, certainly. So we thank you for that.
Supervisor Singstuck.
Yeah, thank you. It looks to me on page 499, the property lister is doing a real good job, but I have to admit my ignorance. What is that function, and why is it handled differently?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The question was, of course, the function of the property tax lister. Basically, the cities handle their own tax bills, and we tell them what amount of revenue the county's entitled to, and they spread that over their tax base. But the towns rely on the tax lister to keep the records regarding property tax and to generate the tax bills. So the primary function is to do the tax billing for the towns, and that's a function that's only assessed to the towns that use the tax lister.
And we also, just to add to that, Mark, if you don't mind, we also do that for the city of Amro and the village of Winnebago as well. Am I right? Yeah. So it's the 16 towns plus the 2 smaller incorporated communities.
Supervisor Schneider.
This question is actually for Chuck. Chuck, on your adjustments sheet that you handed us for GIS, you just want us to add the 5,100 and the 740 to the 2 totals to obtain new totals? Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, there are no other questions.
The last budget item we have is page 518, Land and Water Conservation. Tom Davies, the head of that department, is in the back of the room and can help us answer any questions. The department is budgeted for 7 full-time positions, the same as in 2013. And the levy for 2014 is an increase from last year's adopted budget of $459,611 to $483,683.
Supervisor Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you elaborate on the differences here? I'm sorry about the page numbers, but the decrease based on budgeting for expected actuals and not potential grant amounts, and then as that's reflected later between the request and the executive budgeting on page. That could be right. Oh, I see it on 528. There's a operating grants difference where the adopted for 2013 was 426,000. The request was for 426,000. The executive budget is for 272. Is that for? Are we looking at not getting a grant that was anticipated, or?
I can actually answer that, Mark, if you want me to. Sure. Typically, we do our budgets, of course, in July and have to turn them in, and those numbers that are in there are numbers that we request funding for through our Soil and Water Resource Management Grant. We request that money from the state of Wisconsin, and we usually don't get what we request, but that's the only number that we have to put in. And this year, for one of the first years ever, we actually had a hard number that we actually knew because of where the state was at in their budget process. And so working with Chuck Orenstein, we wanted to try and put in the actual numbers, and there's a couple of reasons for it. One of them is that our tax or our insurance is actually based sometimes off of what our dollar amounts are as a county. And so if we can have actual numbers in there less, it gives a truer picture of how much money we're really going to get. And so those are reflected in the revenue and then also in the expenses, because all but $139,000 is actually cost sharing money. So we give that to the landowners to put in projects. It's if we put in a project and the county pays for it, we get reimbursed from the state. So the expense and the revenue are identical.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the type of projects that's used for?
Well, I sure can. We do shoreline protection projects. We do offshore structures. We do barnyard renovation projects with landowners that have phosphorus loading going into surface water. We do grass waterways. We do upland structures, wetland restorations. We actually do in residential area along lake shores and streams. We will actually work with homeowners to, if they'll give us 35 feet of their manicured lawn, we'll put in grass buffers to filter out the phosphorus before it loads into the lake. So there's a whole host of things. We do nutrient management planning, and we cost share that, which is working with landowners to make sure that they're only putting on the amount of nutrients that are required for the crop and that it's not working its way into the system. So every single project that we do is related to water quality improvement.
And does that, are city residents eligible as well as county residents?
Yeah, we have a handful of projects that we do work within the city limits thanks to Bob Warnke. We do well abandonments within the city of Oshkosh and all other municipalities. We also do shoreline protection projects within the city, and sometimes we work with the cities as a demonstration project. If you've seen the stuff in Menominee Park, that was all done. And if you've seen the front cover of your budget book, Terrell's Island, that project we were very, very much involved with the DNR.
Okay,
So
I
thank you for that, Chuck.
I was going to ask about the Menominee Park work, and so you did have a role with the shoreline restoration project there.
Yep, yeah, we worked with the Parks Department there.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
That completes the entire budget, so.
Okay, we'll take a next Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do apologize for being a bit tardy here this morning. I got this work thing that gets in the way. 7:30, 8:30 some mornings are my busiest time. In regards to one portion of the budget that was highlighted while I was not here, I was hoping that the executive could just go over the child support narrative briefly. I just had a couple questions based on understanding it was one of the areas of not that significant of an increase in levy, but can you give just a brief history of this department and tell us how it's evolved over maybe the last years?
The department is using county employees, but it's not funded by levy. It's funded by federal and state dollars. And because the department draws on other parts of the county for support, they're allowed to build those into their reimbursed costs. So the department often generates revenue in excess of the costs. But those revenues, of course, are coming from other taxing authorities. So typically, it's sort of a negative levy amount that you see from the child support area. The number of employees is growing in that department, but the number of non-custodial parents has been growing sharply, and that's increased their workload pretty dramatically.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we get more from the state and federal government. We take in more from those sources than we actually spend in.
Well, it would actually balance out with what we're spending, but because some of that spending is occurring in other departments, for instance, in corporate counsel's office or other departments of the county, the cash flows into child support enforcement exceed the cash flows out within that budgeted area. In total, there has to be an expense incurred by the county for all the reimbursements we get for the state and fed, but some of it is done in the form of incentive monies.
And you had just mentioned Corporation Counsel Office. What is the relationship between Corporation Counsel and Child Services?
Corporate counsel may do backup for them in the event that there's court hearing dates and the head of that department is on vacation or out sick. Would you say, are you coordinating with them or Human Services on the termination of parental rights?
No, they don't do anything with termination.
Okay. Anything else that you can think of that?
No, basically, my office, when they have legal matters, serves as a backup for Kathleen Dietrich. So she's double booked. So she has 2 hearings in one place at one time. She's on vacation. She gets sick. She has to be at a meeting or conference. We'll take over and handle that for her.
At one point in time, were the 2 offices actually one office?
Child support, I've been here for 32 years now. The child support office has never been part of the Corporation Counsel's office. The Corporation Counsel office at one time provided, and this was a long time ago before you had the DNA tests and everything like that, they did, at one time the DA's office, the district attorney's office was doing the paternity work for the child support agency, but they made that a low priority, and this was 25 years ago. This has nothing to do with the people that are there right now. And this is before I was the Corporation Counsel. Corporation Counsel took that work back into their office and then hired somebody to do the paternity work. But subsequently, things changed as far as the way the legal work was set up in the corporation, in the child support agency. And that's all done in the child support agency now by the attorney that they have there.
Thank you. And the last question would be, is this department optimized, truly optimized to best suit The need in Winnebago County, there's one comment I do hear periodically in regards to human services in Winnebago County, and that is in regards to specifically to this department, it takes a long time to get things done, and a lot of times what is revealed is not enforced necessarily. So is this department truly optimized to best benefit the citizens of Winnebago County?
Well, that certainly is the goal. But of course, it's a matter of interpretation whether they're achieving that or not. But certainly the goal is to...
What is your interpretation?
They've got to follow all the legal requirements. And in the current economy, you have a lot of non-custodial parents that are changing jobs and moving a lot. And if they're uncooperative, it's difficult to track them down and to enforce the orders. But ideally, every child would get financial support from their biological parents, and that would be the goal.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your leeway, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to note that Murphy's Law is definitely still in force. My hearing aid situation has worked the last 2 days. It's working right now. It was not working in the few areas in which I really wanted to contribute. So basically what's going to happen is I probably will ask a question that's already been answered, or I may go into something that that will duplicate things that have gone. So I do apologize for that, and I do ask for your letting me do that very much. Thank you.
I have a concern. From what we've added people this year in the budget in 2013, that wasn't budgeted last year. We added a lot of people this year. What happens in the next 2 years for all the people we just added? All the years prior to this, we took people away. I mean, where's the money going to come from in a couple of years?
Yeah, we're probably down close to 100 people since I started in 2005.
I understand, but
and some years they go down and some years they go up. But oftentimes those additions have been strategic. For instance, in human services, several people were added to keep juveniles in their family homes rather than to have placements with Lincoln Hills. And of course, a placement at Lincoln Hills now runs over $90,000 a year. So it was much more economical to have staff and reduce those. And we currently don't have anyone placed with Lincoln Hills. But it actually saved a lot of money by adding that staff and eliminating those placements. But in addition to saving money, the outcomes by placing juveniles in those facilities was pretty consistently negative, because once they were out of the family home for a long time, they never would really fit back in again. So by keeping them at home and providing more support to the parents at home, we've generally had better outcomes. So sometimes we add staff actually to save money, and that's especially true in the human service area.
Okay, I just want to answer that. Your answer. We were very fortunate that the kids that murdered their parents here a few years ago, we were very fortunate that they put them in an adult court. Would have cost us a tremendous amount of money had, for some little reason, they went to adult court. I realize that happened in that case, but it could have been the opposite also. But I still say that we've added a tremendous amount of people. Where I realize you have to add some. That's not my thing. Is that we're going back to where we're adding and adding. I can't see how you're going to afford this in 2 years. I hope I'm wrong, but I just... Yeah, I know. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, we will take an extended break. Some people still want to make out some amendments, so go at it.
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at OshkoshCommunityMedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at OshkoshCommunityMedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at OshkoshCommunityMedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at OshkoshCommunityMedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at OshkoshCommunityMedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at OshkoshCommunityMedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at OshkoshCommunityMedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org.
Okay, I guess there are some more amendments coming, but we'll at least get started, and when they come, we'll add them to
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break.
So we'll go to amendment number 1. Oh, you have to re-punch in because we had to reprogram our amendments into the computer. So re-punch in.
Here's yours. Here's your set.
Amendment number 1, Supervisor Warnke.
Approval of 227-102013. I would like to speak on this first. First of all, I'd like to talk about the airport. There seems to be an awful lot of slamming of this airport lately, and I want to bring out some facts on this airport. And some of the facts I want to read are from the economic impact. This is what happens at the airport. We create 548 jobs. We bring in $23.6 million in wages. We bring in $750,040 in tax revenues. We bring in $1.5 million in lease payments. We create 308 jobs. We have $12 million in wages, and when you have the additional impact that it brings in $40 million a year. In addition to this, we've got the aviation park that we just bought the land for, which is going to increase more. What this thing is it's a haying operation, and everybody has already made a judgment on this thing without hearing anything about it. Now, we have an assistant director who's worked very hard on this thing, and nobody has even heard about it. So what we're going to do is we're not going to put it in this year's budget. The reason it's not going into this year's budget is because the person that leases it now already has his seeds in for next year. So if we bring it back, or we're going to look at other options for this thing, put it out on a bid process, whatever way we go or decide. So we are going to pull it for now.
Okay, so number 1 is removed.
The thing is, the aviation committee, we have a very good aviation committee, and these people are all out. They want to be transparent. Everybody, we're trying to be proactive and make money for this airport. And, at least listen to what we're going to say before you do a vote or even think about it. So, for now, we're going to pull it.
Supervisor Haig.
I didn't push my button, sir.
Supervisor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Supervisor Warnke's position here, and I'm glad that we're not going to do anything with this in the budget this year. Something that I think that needs to be looked at, and maybe it has been looked at, is my problem is that I don't believe that the staff on the airport has the expertise that a farmer has in regards to harvesting of the crops and whatnot. That's not their primary job. If you're going to be looking at this in the future, I would suggest that, it's one thing to get a crop of hay into the areas that you want it in for as a crop. Rather than spending all that money on capital equipment, you may want to look at a custom farming operation that is more than willing to come in, harvest the crops when you need them harvested, and even facilitate you with where the feed will be going. Farmers are getting to be doing that more and more because of the expense of the equipment out there now. There are some individuals becoming very specialized in this market in the planting and harvesting of crops. And I don't think that we want to be adding staff and equipment down the road to try this out. I think the best way to start off would be to go that route. If you haven't had that discussion, I would suggest that you at least look at that.
We are going to look at it, and what we're looking at now is we're getting around $5,000 for this thing now. And Fond du Lac County, I talked to the supervisor from Fond du Lac County,
His mic's on.
They have a haying operation down there, but they lease the land out, and they get $300 an acre. And so we are looking at different options, but I just want the board to realize that we're trying to be proactive, we're trying to get more income there, and on top of everything else that we have. So we probably won't go for the equipment, but the assistant director Chris is from a farm background, and he does know. He's the one who's putting a lot of work into this. So we're not going to rule it out as yet, but I do think we're looking at, like you said, doing a partnership with another farmer. So that's my story.
Okay. What they're asking for here is they're asking to remove it out of the budget, because I thought that he could just pull it out, but because it was added to the budget, we have to vote on it to take it out. Supervisor Konitsky.
I'd just like to thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to thank the Aviation Committee for thinking outside the box. I think that's nice to hear. Thank you.
Supervisor Engelbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a couple of comments. I was going to speak to the fact that we did have a staff person who's from a farm background. We also have an employee who does farming on the side, so we do have some pretty knowledgeable people. We're also contemplating growing hay in an area where we would not be comfortable opening it up to the outside to come in. It's a restricted area where our employees could go in there, but we wouldn't necessarily be able to open that up to farmers to bring their equipment in whenever they want. And so we are looking at a lot of things, but I just wanted to make a comment on the airport because it always seems controversial. And to me, I asked a question of a couple of other supervisors. What would this county look like if we didn't have an airport? How would we compete with all the other companies, with all the other counties in the state, if we want to be considered a major thriving county and we had no airport? All of them have them, and we would be at a competitive disadvantage if we didn't have an airport to offer services to the businesses in this area. Thanks.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Probably redundant because I tried to punch out and because you had clarified what the vote was here. As I understand it, at this time, they're asking us to vote yes to remove it.
Right.
Thank you.
Supervisor Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As I'm listening to Pat here, I'm thinking we also should be thinking, not us, but the committee, the airport committee, should start thinking in terms of our Ag and Extension Department and also our Land Conservation Department. We've got some very, very bright people here working for us, and they probably could give you a lot of help, or at least a lot of ideas of where to go next. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll vote by our little iPad. Oh, okay.
Thank you. I'd like to actually commend the airport staff for running the numbers on this and not jumping to the conclusion that we got to get this done right away because we need the revenue. It's better to take procedural steps to make sure we're doing everything right and that we can get the return on our investment rather than going and say we got to get this done right now because there's pressure to do it. So once we looked at the numbers, we thought, well, this is still a viable idea, but we need another year to try to figure out what we're going to do.
Okay. We'll vote by our little iPad. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. You have to change the click up.
Voting to pull it?
Voting to pull it.
You're voting to remove
the money.
To remove that amount from the budget, which the Aviation Committee wants to have done. That is passed. Okay, she will change it for you. Amendment number 2, add $150,000 to the capital outlay buildings account to the UW Extension budget to build a storage building to be shared by UW Extension and Winnebago County Fair Association. Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for amendment number 2 on Resolution 227-102-013.
Been moved and seconded. Supervisor Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little background, maybe the Reader's Digest condensed version of the events will suffice here. I see a number of co-signers on this resolution and just want to make sure that we're well informed before we vote on this. In regards to the $150,000, this amount is just a real recent thing. I mean, this is just within the last couple weeks that that the source of this amendment has decided that we need $150,000. The original agenda for the last UW Extension and Agriculture meeting was mailed out Thursday, October 10th, and was posted to the internet at that time. There was a request made for an amended agenda on the following day, October 11th. The original agenda was received in the mail. There's a couple members on the committee who don't do internet, so those were received in the mail the following day, Saturday the 12th. There was an amended agenda posted to the internet on Monday, the 14th, and that amended agenda was also mailed that day. That amended agenda did not even include an attachment with a proposal or a resolution as to why or what we were going to be talking about in regards to the storage facility agenda item. The amended agenda was received in the mail that following day, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of that week, and again included no proposal or resolution to consider. It has been the previous position of this committee that we do not have a need that requires a new storage facility. In fact, and I believe if you check the minutes, this committee has been united in its opinion that we wanted to separate from any talk of a storage facility not only with the Park and Recreation Department, but that we did not have a sufficient need that required building a building. Furthermore, as we had our discussion in our last committee meeting, it was acknowledged that we needed a formal document signed by Park and Rec allowing UW to have a facility on their property. Because at the previous facilities meetings, we've understood that anything on the north side of Y there is basically Park and Rec property, and the buildings are maintained by Park and Rec. One other comment was made about the source of the funding for this particular storage facility during our last committee meeting, that it's not coming out of the levy. Well, I would remind everybody a question that was posed to the county executive during this recent budget talk, that all the money that is in the fund balance is, of course, levy money. So this isn't like we're reaching into a pot of monopoly money or something and pulling out $150,000. This is real money that was levied to the taxpayers of Winnebago County. Lastly, why do this now? It's simply because, and I hope the new members understand, this only requires a majority vote at this time. If this resolution was passed through the normal process of going through the committee, where we could have a typical debate on spending this type of money, and then would come to the full county board, it would require a 2/3 vote. So that's why we're doing it now, and I hope that this board votes against this amendment simply to have it go through its proper channels and come to the board for a proper vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did sign on this. I was asked to sign this, and I was brought up that there was a problem out there, and that's typically, or that is the reason I put my name on it. Since then, I have heard some stories of organizational problems, cooperation problems, just cleaning up things. I just want to point out that I don't have a strong opinion on this either way, and I'm hoping some discussion does come out on this so that we can make this clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gabbard.
If my memory serves me right, Mr. Supervisor Fari brought up some information a couple months ago about repairing the garages and all the buildings that were in disarray to the tune of $350,000. And when I saw this, I thought, well, here we have two departments working together to do something for storage. I'm going to support this because I just think that we need to put this building up for storage, and we've got other things we can. This to me is a small factor in the capital outlay budget, so I'm still going to support this. I think they need the storage building. I think you've got two groups of people that are going to make it work. A document signed by the Parks Department does not take that big an effort, and I really don't want to have a discussion of this at another county board meeting because of what Supervisor Fari was trying to do, and we voted it down. This is $200,000 less than repairing all those garages. So I am going to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to respond to a couple of the items that were made. First, when we talked about the agenda coming in late, it's strictly a red herring, has absolutely nothing to do with this. I would point out that 4 members of the committee have signed on this. So when we talk about the committee not being in favor of this, I'm not sure where that came from. We do have a document that was signed by each of the directors for extension, UW Extension, for the parks and for the facilities, saying that yes, it's okay to build a building there, it's okay to have the facilities department take care of it. So talking about it, have everybody agreed that's absolutely done. And going back to the levy, the money that's in the reserve, as one would call it, it's levy money. Sure, that's absolutely true. Money comes in, money comes out. So I think what we're playing with a bunch of red herrings here. I appreciate the people speaking in favor of this. I think the issue is we do need the space. The space we're in right now is not sufficient, and we tried to find space outside of the existing building, a county-owned space, so that we could not have to build a building. That was not fine. So when someone talks about the history of saying that we were not in favor of it, that's correct. At one time we were not in favor of it. We should find space on the existing county buildings. That was not possible. So the agreement that we had was, hey, we need to have the space. There's no other way to do it except to build it. So I really hope we have support for this, that people will vote for it, and we can get past this. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not profess to know whether this building is needed or not, but I do have a very strong belief that when we are having a building program, we ought to follow regular channels. Supervisor Haig has raised one very important point, and that is that had this gone through proper channels, it could have been done with a 2/3 vote. Doing it in the budget process subverts our whole mode of operation here. I don't think the county board ought to take shortcuts of this sort. So I will be voting against it.
Okay, we'll vote on our little iPads. If you want to add the... Oh, I'm sorry. He's way down below. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief. I have a few concerns that both Supervisor Thompson and Haig have brought up. I really don't feel I can support this at this time. I think for the simple reason being that this is what I would consider a substantial infrastructure cost that we have no idea what the building going to look like. We haven't addressed what we're going to do with the old building, whether we allocate money to demolish the old garage. There's just a lot of things that haven't been addressed that if it would have went through the capital projects program, we would have had a lot of the answers that I don't feel comfortable with. And I really don't know one way or another whether we do or do not need that building. I mean, that's something that I can't address from what I've been given here today. So I cannot support this at this point in time. I think that it should go back, and if it is a worthy project, that the plans do include the raising of the old building and a construction of the new building, if that's the case. $150,000 building, that's a pretty good sized building, and I have no idea what we're putting into that building structure. So I can't support this at this time.
Supervisor Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we're talking about here, this building, or a building, has gone through every committee there is other than how to diaper a baby. I think if there would be one of those, it would have gone through that too. I have tramped around behind Mike Elders through all of the buildings, what we own, one after another, at 2 different times, and looked through the buildings. It doesn't appear that anybody is willing to give up any space to move anything over in the buildings that we could add more to it. As a farmer, growing up as a farmer, I was taught never to leave things outside in the rain or to shove it somewhere where it isn't going to be taken care of. Maybe times are different now, I don't know, but it sure wasn't when I was a kid. If we left a nail outside, my dad would have a fit. I don't really know where this has come from to say this has not gone through committees. I think this has gone through almost every committee, and we're going into 3 years now that we've been talking about this, and nothing has been done since. There's a lot of things for the fair. I'm on the Fair Board. I'm your representative through the county board on the Fair Board. Those people work their hind ends off, to be perfectly honest, to take care of everything, and I can't quite see where this comes from, that it's not gone through other committees. I have sat through more committee meetings that I'm not on the committee than I can remember. So if anybody else has anything to say about this, that's fine. I don't care what we have, as long as the building will keep our equipment dry and taken care of. Thank you.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll use my last comment here. Just answering Pat Brennan, or Supervisor Brennan's comment, the building would be a 2,000 square foot building, which is the equivalent of the garage. It'll be a very simple building, a pole building. There will be no heat. There will be no electricity in the building. It'll be used only for the storage and being used when we need to take things out of it. So relating to the existing garage, when we move that, the conversation was held with with Director Way as to what we do with that building, since it is a park building. And his thing was, let's let it sit until we can determine whether we need to take it down, or we can use it for something, or we can repair it, or whatever. So we're saying that's really a different issue than we're talking about here. Extension and the fair will move out of the garage, the east garage, which the people have gone over and looked at, should have no question about the fact it's not sufficient. So the fact that we are putting in a very simple building, we're trying to keep it simple, and keep the numbers down. The $150,000 came from the facilities director, Elder, and that number was based on an estimate he had gotten for people to put in simple buildings like this, plus some allowance for other things that might come up, such as water mitigation and that type of thing. So we really have gone through this, and we did not feel it was important that we come up with an architectural design and pictures and stuff like that. And I guess I have to apologize for that, because I did not realize that would have been necessary. So I'm gone. I certainly hope that we do this now, because as Supervisor Barker commented, we've gone around and around and around on this, and we're sitting back and saying, let's don't do it. And that doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to the people that signed off. So I once again, I do hope that we approve this. Let's get by it and move on to other things. Thank you again.
Supervisor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recently joined the UW Ag and Extension Committee, and this has been part of every agenda of every meeting that I've been at since I joined. We had an 80% okay of this in our committee. 4 or 5 people. 4 of the 5 people are on as co-signers of this amendment. We also, one of the concerns that I voiced at our last committee meeting was that we needed a signed agreement among the departments that were going to help us maintain that building, and also Park and Rec, as well as UW Ag and Extension, as to exactly how we were going to handle it, how we were going to get it in and out of it, and things of that nature. That has been accomplished. Since I joined the UW Ag and Extension Committee, forgive me if I'm stepping on anybody's toes, but this may be the first time that I've actually seen genuine, or my perception is that we've seen genuine cooperation among the various departments involved in this. And I'm proud that we finally have that, to my satisfaction. And again, to address Supervisor Brennan's comment, I don't exactly know exactly what the new building is going to look like either, but I do know it's not going to look like the current building, which is totally non-serviceable. So I will be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to this facility and the comments that have just recently been made, there is nothing that is currently outside of a storage facility rusting and withering away. That's a misconception. In fact, and I don't know if Mr. Elder is here, but I believe that there were some trailers recently purchased to store and facilitate the transportation of animal pens from the fairgrounds across the street to the Grape Hole building, which exists, was improved specifically for the purposes of storing a majority of the items that I believe would be stored in this new building. Is Mr. Elder here? Can he answer that question? I believe that there was money spent on trailers to transport these pens.
Last year in the 2013 budget, we were provided funds to buy 3 trailers to load up the large animal pens that were stored in a gray tin shed on Butler Avenue. And we did have funds in there to clean up the building and make it serviceable for storing of the animal pens.
And approximately how much money, to the best of your recollection, was spent on the improvements and the trailers?
All total, probably about $15,000.
Thank you. In regards to this new signed agreement between UW Extension and Parks, where is it? Earlier today, in fact, Mr. Way was asked that question specifically from one of our colleagues on this board. There was no specific agreement mentioned in Mr. Way's answer to that question. Where is that agreement? I don't believe it exists, just like the plan for this building. We have an opportunity on one of the upcoming amendments to spend a small amount of money to evaluate all the buildings. This is the cost of leadership. We need to figure out once and for all what we've got, what is vacant, what is not. Supervisor Barker is entirely correct. We have followed Mr. Elder from here to basically almost eternity. There is space available. Some of these buildings look like Sanford and Son. We need to get our arms around what we have before we spend $150,000 on a new building. Last point. Point was just made in regards to 80% of this committee signed off on this specific resolution. That is entirely correct. I'm not sure what they signed off on because we certainly didn't have any type of an architectural drawing or what's going to be put there like Mr. Bernan spoke of earlier. But I would also remind this board that it was 80% of this committee as well that voted to support a joint effort with Park and Recreation to spend over $700,000 on a building only 18 months ago. Thank you.
Supervisor Olson.
This seems to be a very, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This seems to be a very controversial issue here. And someone who is not really familiar with the history of this, I'd like to ask just a couple of questions. One is, has this particular resolution been presented to the board before? Or is this new? Because we were talking about how this has been discussed for years and years and years. Has it been forwarded to the board for vote previously? No. Okay. So it sounds to me, and I agree with Supervisor Haig on many of the things he said here, it sounds to me like we're trying to do something outside the typical procedural things that we need to do in order to pass a resolution. I also agree with him in the fact that, you know, there may be a real need for this building. But if we spend $150,000 here and $150,000 there and $150,000 there, and we don't know what the total needs are of our building requirements, we're going to be spending money on specific things that maybe we shouldn't have because we didn't look at the whole picture. So I think this really needs to go through additional thought process, and I think it needs to be looked at from a different procedure point of view. Thank you.
Supervisor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Supervisor Winder giving me the information that he was able to about what the generality of the structure are. A pole shed, approximately 2,000 square feet. My issue then is when I equate that out, and as part of my job that I do, I have to look at agricultural buildings and other buildings per square foot to equate to the replacement values, et cetera. And when I calculate that out, that comes to $75 a square foot for cold storage. And to me, that's a red flag. I want to know what's in that structure, because to me, there's some agricultural structures that are shops that are at that $75 a square foot. So that's why I really, I'm not against having a building out there. I really not. I just don't think that we have a full grasp of what we want to put out there and what the actual cost of that building is going to be at this point in time. So I still can't support this.
Thank you. Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as a little background, Supervisor Olson, go back about a year and a half, maybe even 2 years ago, the Parks wanted to have a new building. The Extension wanted a building. We thought we'd go together. And the cost was exuberant, there's no doubt about it, but there was more than just one person on the Extension voted against it. I know of at least two. Mr. Way called me maybe about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, to tell me that he and Chris, and I don't know who else, had been in a meeting talking about getting together, if he has a problem, putting it in as far as park space, and he said he had no problem. If there's a contract, I don't really know. But I asked Rob again before he left just now, just to make sure that I understood it correctly. He does not have a problem whatsoever about them putting a building on parkland. As far as their needs, they would have a better handle on it than I would, because my position is parks, not the Extension. But I will support this, because at least they're coming up front without any hidden agendas behind what might come back 6 months from now, 3 years from now, where other committees have done this in the past. So therefore, I will support this, because at least they're coming up front asking what their requests are. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Elder, could you address the concerns of Mr. Brennan's comment about $75 per square foot? Is that the going rate for a building like that? Thank you.
This estimate is for the entire project. The actual cost estimate I got from Walter's Building was $36,000 for their building. We would need to put in a concrete slab and a driveway to it, which would probably add on another $15,000. We're going to be adding in about at least 2,000 square feet of impervious surface to the parks, which is within the city of Oshkosh's stormwater utility, which means that we have to go through and prove what kind of stormwater runoff there's going to be and what kind of measures we're going to do to take care of that. And that would all be part of this project.
Okay. I just have one comment. The Butler Building was mentioned. I shouldn't say little. Melissa Conrad from the Clerk of Courts has that building in pretty top-notch shape already. She took the initiative upon herself to go out and clean it up with everybody. But I think she's out there working right now, cleaning it up. But that building they called me out there to look. It was like everybody took and threw everything in the center. Papers falling over, boxes wet and all mixed, mashed up. But I mean, she took the initiative upon herself to clean it up out there, and it does look pretty good already. But I just wanted to comment on that one. Somebody said Sanford in some building, but she did take the initiative to go clean it up, and it is looking better. Okay, we'll vote on our little iPad. We'll vote aye if you approve, no if you disapprove. That is passed. Transfer funds, 10,000, amendment number 3, transfer funds, $10,000 for the installation of a propane filling station from Sheriff's Department budget to the Highway Department budget. Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure you all recall the discussion when the sheriff presented his budget. Included in that budget was $10,000 to basically install a propane tank and a pumping system to service the law enforcement vehicles that have been converted to LP gas. This initiative is a very good one, but the problem with putting that at the Sheriff's Department is that currently the Winnebago County Highway Department furnishes the fuel for most of the county vehicles. So that's kind of their fueling depot per se. In a discussion with Mr. Winters, Director, Highway Commissioner for Winnebago County, it's been indicated that there's a high probability that he is going to be installing a tank also to service not only his department vehicles but other county vehicles. This initiative is to transfer that $10,000 from the sheriff to the highway department so they can have a centralized system at the highway department. That's basically the long and short of it. Hopefully this initiative will be continued by the county. I'm hopeful facilities department, other departments will start this conversion process and it'll become quite popular, I would think. In regard to $10,000, we're looking at a large tank, probably a containment facility and a pumping transfer station, which is a pressure type system for fueling the vehicles. So I think that's the kind of the diameter of the project itself. I'm not sure 10,000 is enough, but at least it probably starts the ball rolling. My position is let's put it in a central location at the highway department so they can provide that service to all the county vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll vote on our iPad. Vote aye if you approve, no if you disapprove. Supervisor Widener? Supervisor Finch? You have to push confirm. That is passed. Amendment number 4, delete $90,000 from airport budget capital outlay account for funding for an air traffic control tower backup air conditioning system. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for resolution number 227-102013.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Then moved and seconded. Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question is this backup system a people's backup system or an equipment backup system? Basically saying, unless if we don't have this and the air conditioning system goes out, is the system down, or do people just have to roll up their sleeves and be a little bit warm?
Go ahead. You're on.
There it is. Okay. This is a mechanical system. It'd be attached to the existing system so that in case the main air conditioning system fails, they would still get cool air up to the tower cab. It wouldn't service the bottom portion offices at the base building of the tower itself. I've heard comments say if it gets a little warm up there, these roll up your sleeves. It's not quite that simple because in the middle of summer, that's a glass enclosure. It's like a greenhouse up there. We've seen it when the system has failed in the past. When the air conditioning goes down, it'll go from about 68 to 70 degrees up there. Within 10 minutes down up to about 85, 90 degrees. It'll get very warm very quickly because heat rises and you're surrounded by glass. During non-EA times, the controllers have suffered through it until we got it repaired, got it back up and running. During EA times, however, you have to think about this is the FAA controllers now operating that facility. In their contract, they are unionized. And in their union contract, it does say that they can walk off the job if they're unsuitable working conditions, and they might do that. That's 20 controllers at that point walking off until it's repaired. Something we have to think about.
So basically, it's a people thing and not an equipment thing. Is that correct?
No, it's both. If the system fails, it gets very warm. It also, it's going to promote mold growth in the terminal, the tower shaft. Depending on how long the system's down, we have to look at that as well. But it is also creature comfort, if you want to put it that way.
Thank you.
Supervisor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Chuck on this one. If the board were to approve the deletion of the 90,000, unlike amendment number 1, this one offsets by a reduction in the tax levy, versus amendment 1 was against the fund balance applied. What would your preference be in regards to this, and why?
From the standpoint of preparing the 2015 budget, that would reduce the base that we have to work with. So, if you're asking me what I would do, I would leave the levy there and put that money in the capital project fund, or reduce the airport fund balance applied and leave the levy where it is.
Okay. With that said, then, Chuck, I would like to amend the amendment and strike shall be offset by reduction in tax levy and be replaced with offset by reduction in the fund balance applied.
I will second that.
Supervisor Haig on the amendment. Supervisor Warnke on the amendment. Supervisor Hardy on the amendment. Supervisor Olson on the amendment.
No.
Supervisor Fari on the amendment.
No, sir.
All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? The amendment is carried. Now back to the other original amendment as amended. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to this amendment, I guess I'd be remiss not to remind this board that we did delete this $90,000 expenditure last year as well, and haven't heard or seen hide nor hair of it since then. Not that it's not important to properly air condition the tower. However, it just seems, as has been pointed out, it just seems like a inordinate amount of money to do that. I guess the big question would be, why doesn't somebody else come alongside of us and help with this project? Have we ever asked EAA to help this? I know that the building itself was paid for, built by an entity other than Winnebago County. However, it just seems to me that question should be asked. Maybe in the next calendar year, if this passes, somebody will ask that question. I certainly agree with Mr. Warnke's comments earlier about the airport. And I'll say it again, this airport is definitely a part of the county infrastructure that we would not have as solid a foundation as we even have today if it weren't for the airport. However, it just seems to me that there are instances where we kind of shoot for the moon on some of these projects instead of hold the line on the budget, especially during these times when there's more and more levy for the airport. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Warnke.
I kind of feel that taking this $90,000 out is somewhat of a trying to micromanage this thing. We had a good year this summer. We had good weather and it wasn't needed. But you have to look at the safety factor in this. You have to look at, as Mr. Mall said, the union people, the controllers do have a right to have this. For those of you who've never been on top of the tower, it could get real hot up there. I've been up there, and you know, when you got to be up there for a long period of time, and they're not going to use this if they don't have to. But this is something that we do need. It's been bounced back and forth for a long time, and I think that if we just do it and get it over with, you know, when you look at the EAA, there's an awful lot of people that these controllers are responsible for, and not only the EAA, but it's also the everyday operations that go on there. So I would hope that you approve this, and that's the way I'm going to vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do recall this coming up last year, I believe, at the budget hearings, and I guess I wanted to follow up on a couple of things that I think I remember from last year. A question would be, when the current air conditioning system goes down, how long is it typically down for before it's repaired and serviceable again?
Actually, it's hard to determine. We've had it down for as little as 1 hour, but we've had it down for as little or as much as 2 days, depending on how severe the problem is to the system.
So it has been down for more than 2 hours?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and did the system go down at all this year during?
No, it did not.
Not at all since last November, or just during EAA?
Not since last November of last year.
And the funds for this would be coming out of the airport fund, is that correct?
Yes.
So it's not current, it's not out of the existing levy budget, right? All right, thank you.
Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I kind of go back to my understanding is that this was paid for by a federal agency. I assume it was designed by a federal agency, engineered by a federal agency, and built by local contractors per their standards.
And not warranted. And not warranted.
And no warranty, yes. However, I think if we have FAA controllers that are in jeopardy here, which is what has been stated, it really should be addressed by a federal agency to correct a federal problem. I'm not sure it's our responsibility to do this, so I don't know I can support this expenditure.
Supervisor Olson.
I withdraw.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I to understand that the $90,000 is budgeted through the airport fund, or is that from the levy?
From the airport fund.
It's from the airport fund. Okay.
He changed, he amended it, correct? It was just amended. That was the amendment you voted on.
It was just amended to go from the airport fund?
To the airport fund.
To the airport fund? I would like to, I apologize, my original request to speak was for an explanation. I needed to leave the body for a second, but I would like to submit a substitute amendment, one that would delete the term delete in line 15 and modify that such that that be funded from the airport fund. So if it's already been amended, that would be part of the amendment, and so that that substitute amendment would encompass the change which has been acknowledged by the body, but delete the term delete, so that in effect this amendment would simply, instead of charging the tax levy, simply charge the airport fund, maintaining funding for the air conditioning system.
Okay, I didn't hear a second, so. I didn't hear a second. Okay, Supervisor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Much like Supervisor Haig, I recall this being debated here at the County Board budget last year as well, and my recollection is that it was defeated in terms of including it in the budget that time. Now we have this resolution before us again, and my feeling in regards to it remains honestly the same. For a number of reasons. First of all, $90,000 is a pretty high price tag for this, for something that we may need. We've already heard that it's gone down either an hour or up to 2 days, but not necessarily even every year. So you have to ask yourself whether it's worthwhile investing $90,000 for something that you may not even need every year and may only need for up to an hour at a time. The other thing I think we have to consider is what our alternative or other options are. Have we considered other alternatives as a backup, like some sort of freestanding unit that's portable that we may be able to use in those circumstances that would be hopefully cost much less than $90,000? For something that is simply a backup, I think we need to consider other alternatives like that before we invest in something with a $90,000 price tag. When we look at other departments, we have to ask ourselves, do we really have backup air conditioning units for every single other department? No, I don't think we do. Now, I understand the safety factor that is a little bit different here, but if there's another alternative that doesn't cost us $90,000, then shouldn't we at least consider that? I do think there are other alternatives out there for us that we can consider that don't have such a high price tag. I know we discussed actually some of them last year, I recall, at the budget time. And because of that, because of not considering those alternatives and not considering something that's hopefully a much less price tag than $90,000, I cannot support continuing it in the budget, so I urge you all to support this resolution and delete it the same way that we did last year. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fiery touched on a number of things that resonated with me, and I believe we didn't spend anything for that tower. Is that right, Peter?
No, we did not. That was 100% funded by the FAA.
Okay, and I think we are certainly within our realm to go back to them and throw that back at them. I think that's proper. It's not that old. I think we would be justified in doing that.
Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since this was taken out last year, we had this discussion at our aviation meetings about looking at some other options. I do agree that a backup system is needed for the reasons stated. I also believe that this can be done cheaper. When you take the size of the area that needs to be done and you compare it to a house and what you could air condition that for, it's certainly not $90,000. I don't know what the process is here, but I'm assuming that if this gets deleted and revisited and a cheaper system becomes available, we can still prove that sometime throughout the year, correct?
Sure, you'd have to bring it back to the board, sure.
Yeah, okay. As long as that option is in there, because I do believe it's needed, but I believe it needs to be looked at for something cheaper. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Normally, when you build a duplicate system, like I assume this is going to be, you plan into it to take the primary system down periodically and perform the maintenance using the duplicate system. That way, you're almost assured that you'll never have an outage. That's number one. Number two is we all rely on electric power for our homes. And when the electricity goes out, I think we're looking for our power companies to find the quickest way around the problem and get us our power back. So, I mean, $90,000, I like what Supervisor Rasmussen said, but I don't consider that an outrageous price to do that. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Lautenschlager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I remember when this came up last year too, and I agree with Supervisor Ramos. And my suggestion last year was, and I bought one for my house, is I have a floor freestanding 3 feet tall. I got 2 large bedrooms, a bath, a hallway upstairs, and it does the whole thing. And I paid, a little over $300 for that. I mean, even if you would get a couple of those units, and I would say even you go $1,000. I mean, that's your backup right there. I mean, and my units that I bought, I mean, mine's an air conditioner, a heater, a dehumidifier, a fan. I mean, I think that's all they need up there. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we'll vote by... Oh, he's hidden way down in the bottom of the screen here. Supervisor Brennan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peter, what is the expected life of this backup system? Is it 10, 15, 20 years?
I don't know an honest answer to that. Whatever the life of the existing system is, we would hope that would be as long or longer. So I guess we're looking at, on the existing system, it's probably about a 10 to 15 year life on that.
Okay. And can you refresh my memory on what the actual total cost of the new tower was?
It was around the $5 million project.
$5 million building?
Yes.
$90,000 add-on to make the cooling. It's a long-term piece of equipment that's infrastructure to the building. If this was part of the project, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It would be immaterial in the broad scheme of the project. Okay, thank you.
Well, you want to, okay, delete $90,000 from the airport budget capital outlay account for funding for an air traffic control tower backup air conditioning system. Then on line 18, be it further resolved by Winnebago County Board of Supervisors that such an expense reduction shall be offset by a reduction in the tax levy. So then, this is where it was amended. We went reduction of fund balance, of airport fund balance. That was what was amended. Supervisor Thompson.
Just a quick one. Peter, the proposed expenditure is to provide a backup system for just the room that the controllers occupy, or for the whole tower, or what?
Be primarily for the air traffic, the cab up at top of the structure.
$90,000 to air condition one room? I think we ought to pay very careful attention to Dr. Ramos's suggestion. That is a crazy price for a backup system for one room.
Okay. Okay. We'll take our little iPad and we will vote. If you want to delete, vote aye. If you don't, vote no. if you vote nay, then your support, if you vote aye, you're going to take $90,000 from the airport fund. No, if you vote nay, you're going to delete that amount, so the whole thing will be deleted. If you vote aye, they're going to take the... Yeah.
Mr. Hagg's amendment is to delete the money from the budget. So if
Right.
you vote aye, you're voting to delete the money from the budget. If you vote, well, I'm talking to the mic. I can't help you, Clyde.
Okay, we helped them.
All right. If you vote aye, you're voting to support Mr. Hagg's amendment and to delete the money for the air conditioner from the budget. If you vote aye, you're voting to keep the money in the budget for the air conditioning. I'm sorry, you vote nay, you're voting. If you vote nay, you're voting to keep the money in the budget for the air conditioning.
Leave it was right.
Okay. Aye if you want to take it out so there's no air conditioning. Nay if you want to keep it in so there is air conditioning.
Can they just automatically change it on their board? They can change it on their board, can't they?
Okay, they can all vote again.
Are we going to re-vote now?
Yes. So they keep it in, right?
That is passed. Delete amendment number 5. Delete $100,000 from the airport budget capital outlay account for funding for ARFF 114 fire suppression system replacement. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for Resolution 227-102013.
I'll second for discussion purposes only.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Supervisor Warnke.
This is a totally ridiculous amendment. We're sacrificing the safety of a lot of people here, especially if we get an airplane in. We don't need to do this stuff, and I don't know why this has even been put in. This is a safety thing, and I don't understand it. So that's my feeling. I will vote to not delete it.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was brought to our attention during part of the public testimony of this budget process about FAA requirements for the ARF system in general. So I guess that remains the largest part of the question. I certainly don't disagree with Mr. Warnke that we need certain elements of safety at the airport. I think, however, that there do exist currently certain aspects of emergency and fire safety. So is Winnebago County required by law to own or at any point in time upgrade its fire suppression equipment? Has anybody who currently uses the airport asked for a more current fire suppression system? I haven't seen nor heard, and I certainly think we would, being the busiest airport in the world during a week-long stretch during the summer, we would hear negative news stories in regards to antiquated fire suppression equipment at the airport. I have heard none. Thank you.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to my colleague, Mr. Haig, I agree with Mr. Warnke. This is a safety issue. You don't want to assume that your equipment is going to work and then you have an incident, you find out it's not going to work. I know that things are tested throughout the year, so you have to assume it's going to work, but this is really, in my understanding, correct me if I don't understand this, this is really to replace how the suppression system works and upgrade it to the most current suppression system, which I believe would be more of a 100% foam type of extinguisher. Again, from talking to my colleagues, I understand that this building is manned by the Oshkosh Fire Department. They use it for a fire department, not only for the airport, but for the surrounding area. And I think, obviously, I don't know if they would have a need to use the fire suppression system, but we certainly need something like that to as Mr. Warnke said, to guarantee the safety in case an unfortunate incident would happen. Thank you.
Supervisor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just spoke with Mr. Ornstein, and I was going to make the same amendment as before. However, there is not enough fund balance, so never mind.
Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regard to this issue, those of us, and I'm not really aware of how the fire department works on the property out there. I assume if it's manned by the Oshkosh Fire Department and their trucks, they probably have the most updated equipment. My understanding is that this particular truck is 20 years old, I believe that was stated. Then it does service the airport proper, and then the city fire department is more of a backup system. If that indeed is correct, let me give you a little history. All of us who represent towns and have our own fire departments, we all know that one of the goals that we have in the towns is this foam system because it really works good. It puts a fire out real quick, far better than water, etc. When we talk about airplanes, we're talking about a very explosive fuel. I would think that this fire suppression system would be quite advantageous to put out high combustion fires. So I must disagree with the initiative here. I think it's fine and proper to bring these resolutions forward. I disagree with Mr. Warnke because that is our responsibility and duty if we feel that needs to be done. But I'm going to have to vote against it because I think it's really a good idea to add it to the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Despite the last question about the air conditioning, I really don't believe that the airport is just looking to spend money frivolously. And so I have to assume that the inclusion of a fire suppression system replacement in the budget is based on need. Could we be reassured that this is a system that needs to be replaced?
Yeah, I can. Let me address a couple of the questions that have popped up here. First of all, Supervisor Fari's assessment is partially correct. It is a 20-year-old vehicle. However, the fire suppression system, it's a skid-mounted unit on the back of that, is 40 years old. It was built when our first R vehicle was put into service at that time. The fire chief from the city of Oshkosh and the battalion chief who is in charge of the airport operations have both expressed concerns that because of the age, they can't guarantee that it will remain in serviceable condition into the near future. So, replacing just the back end unit on the truck is our goal there.
Are you saying this is just replacing the back end unit on the truck, not the truck itself?
Not the truck itself, no. Just the skid mount unit on the back of the truck.
The 40-year-old component.
Correct.
Of this. Okay. So.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna vote against this amendment because I do believe that it's important to maintain and update our fire suppression systems for safety purposes at the airport. I really do not, despite the last air conditioning issue, I do not believe the airport is attempting to frivolously spend money here. I think this is an important component. Thank you.
Supervisor Gabbard.
Just a comment for clarity, and I don't know if Peter needs to speak on this, but I need to speak on this because the airport is getting pounded today, so here goes. Fire suppression system is a foam system, and if you were a pilot coming in and your airplane was on fire and that 40-year-old system fails, you, as Winnebago County, can face a lawsuit that vehicle was sent out and it failed, and the way everybody is suing everybody these days, could be a loss of a life and you'd be sued big. Just keep that in mind. The airport, the ARF building is owned by the airport, but the firemen are paid by the city of Oshkosh. I know that's been brought up, but I think people on this board don't understand that anybody that is in that building is a city of Oshkosh fireman. That group of people will also leave the airport and fight fires on 20th in the whole neighborhood out there, businesses. So they're not just restricted for the airport. If you guys don't approve I don't want this deleted. I want you to vote nay, because this fire suppression system will save lives, and I think this board is ethically responsible to vote nay on this. Thank you.
Supervisor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can assure the county board that I'm not simply trying to rail on the airport, and wanted to discuss this issue very briefly because I'm firmly supportive of actually retaining this in the budget. It's a 40-year-old piece of equipment. I do think it's a safety issue as well. I think we're actually being very proactive by looking at replacing it. Most of our units, when we're talking about AC units or heating units, we quite often replace those on a certain timeline because we know that after a certain period of time they're going to fail. This is the type of unit you absolutely cannot have fail when you most need it. I think it's a little bit of a different issue than when we were talking about the air conditioning, because I think there were alternatives there that were much cheaper. However, with this situation, it indeed is a safety issue. Indeed, in my opinion, is needed. I think the airport is being proactive by looking at replacing it, so I'm very supportive of retaining it in the budget and keeping the line item. Thank you.
Supervisor, I just goofed it up, Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A quick follow-up question has been posed to me based on the age of the truck is pretty old. And the question's for Peter, if you could take a minute to answer this. If we purchase this and at a future date decide we need to replace the truck, can this add-on be put onto the new truck?
Yes,
or are we
it could.
just spending a lot of money on an old truck?
No, it could be transferred to a newer vehicle.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Supervisor Engelbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to comment on one of the more interesting comments I've heard today is that we should wait till we read about a disaster in the paper before we address safety issues. And I guess I'm hoping that the majority of this board doesn't feel that way. Thank you.
Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would probably direct this question to our corporate counsel. Would the county be liable if that equipment failed, the old equipment we have now?
Well, probably your question is two questions. Sued.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I mean, anybody can sue anybody at any time.
Oh, yeah, we know that. They do it all the time. But
I'm not going to tell you that we definitely would be liable. It depends on a lot of factors, some which may depend on factual issues, which I can't really issue. I mean, I can't answer, but you know, if you are negligent in the way that you carry out a duty, you could be liable.
Okay. And that's basically the question I had, because I'm voting nay on this amendment.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification on a previous comment here, the comment that I made was simply, has there been any negative news stories in regards to the antiquated fire suppression equipment at the airport? It's unfortunate that that would be misconstrued to the point
where one of our peers would put words in my mouth that I'm waiting for an accident or death at the airport. That is certainly not what I said, and I don't know how we get to that point. Thank you.
Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one short question. Peter, you'll have to answer this one. It's quite old, I'll agree. In the last, say, 5 years, 10 years, how often has it been used?
5 or 10. I mean, I honestly can't go back and give you an exact number, but it's been used. I'm going to guess maybe about at least 24 times.
In the last 5, 10 years?
Yes.
All right. Now, do you ever, through a period of time, just go through like a dry run, just to see everything is functioning?
Yes.
And have you found any malfunctions while you're doing this?
Yes.
You have found malfunctions?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment on Supervisor Farley had asked about, well, we should put this on the city fire department or whatever, but if anybody's watching the city budget or whatever, they're looking right now at cutting fire positions and their heavy rescue positions or whatever. So you think that the city's going to fork out $100,000? Ain't going to happen right now. We need to do this for the safety of our citizens.
I know I'm pegged as an airport lover and everything else, but that airport is the only economic engine Winnebago County has. And as all these corporate jets fly in and out of here, it's very important that they have fire suppression, decent equipment. That's all taken into effect when different airplanes want to come here, when the Penske Corporation comes, or when some other big organization comes to visit Oshkosh Truck, or Plexus if they come into here. That's all taken into effect. That's the only economic engine that we have, and I think that we should kind of forget a lot of the things that we're thinking about our airport. I would hope that you all support it because of the economic engine. Thank you. Okay, take our little iPad. Vote aye if you want to delete. Vote no if you don't. Kenny Neubauer? A if you want to, you vote A if you want to delete it. You vote no if you don't want to delete it. That has failed. Who? Okay. So Kenny, you wanted to vote no?
I didn't want to delete it. Okay. Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Okay, we can correct it. I had the impression that I voted no. Apparently I didn't. Okay. We can correct those. I'd like to be reported as voting no. I
Okay.
may have pushed the wrong button.
Okay, we'll correct it.
One yes. Just one.
Yeah, we'll change it. Yeah, and then we change it.
Amendment number 6. Add $600 to the Corporation Council's general budget, for the council's budget, general fund for a cell phone. I guess the executive couldn't give them the money. Supervisor Haig, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for Resolution 227-102013.
Been moved and seconded. Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you. Hopefully we can speed this up. I have one question for Mr. Bodner. Do you need, want, or request a cell phone? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, let's vote then.
Okay, we'll vote by our, did you want to comment? We'll vote by our little iPad. You want to vote? Did you want to say something? Supervisor Haig.
It wasn't that long ago that I didn't want a cell phone either, that I thought I didn't need one, that I didn't need the expense. I was told that I needed to have a cell phone. It's the way business gets done in the 21st century. I understand that some people may be resistant to change and resistant to time. However, it is very inconvenient to try to get a hold of Corporation Counsel when he is commuting from points A and B and C, and it's just the way we do business today, and I hope that we would support this and that our Corporation Counsel would use a device. Thank you.
That has failed. Amendment number 7, add $5,210 to the county board budget to fund a customer support plan for the board's roll call voting system. I forgot to add this in my budget, and I would like to add it at this time.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. You got to give me a second to catch up here. Amendment?
Is this supposed to increase the tax levy? This one that you just passed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I would like Mr. Ornstein, before we go to the next one, to take a minute and explain what you're doing on the board here. I meant to do it earlier, and
what I'm doing is I'm showing what the allowable levy is at the top, and then the amount that you're either over or under the levy limit. So most of the amendments that you passed had no impact on the levy, and that's why they all say no levy impact. If one doesn't impact the levy, then I would put an amount in there, and it would show how much it would then be over or under the levy limit. There's a lot more to this worksheet, but if the more columns I show, the less visible it is. I tried to include as little as possible so it could be visible from as far away as possible. But it's just showing where you are in relation to the levy limit.
Amendment 8, replace lost funding for drug-free community grant. Supervisor Ramos. Go ahead.
Approval of amendment number 8, and I just wanted to make a couple comments if I could. Just wanted to make a couple comments just to make sure everyone is clear as to what the intent of this amendment actually is. When you look at the budget book the way it currently stands, funding of $125,000 is already included for a drug-free communities coordinator position and associated expenses. Subsequent to the budget being printed and distributed to you, the Public Health Department learned that they did not receive grant funding for the next 5-year cycle for the Drug-Free Communities Grant. Previously, it had received a 5-year grant for $625,000. or $125,000 a year. So the budget that you see already includes this $125,000. What we're intending to do with this amendment is simply substitute the revenue source. The expenses are already in the budget for this position. It's a position that already exists and has already been working in this area previously. So what we're looking to do is take from the Public Health Reserve $125,000 and replace that as the revenue source instead of the drug-free community grant that we had applied for in the first place for this position. Now, just to be clear, when we're taking it from the Public Health Reserve, we are taking it from the Public Health Reserve component for the new consolidated department. And that is approximately $250,000 or so currently. We're not taking it from the other approximately $650,000 or so that remains in the Public Health Reserve that will be refunded to the towns from when the health department existed prior to the consolidation. That's why Finance Director Orenstein was referring to kind of two pots that make up the Public Health Reserve currently. The intent going forward is hopefully to continue to do the good work that the Drug Free Communities Coordinator and Rethink has been doing over the past number of years. And the intent going forward is hopefully that we will reapply and be successful for it over the upcoming years going forward and on into the next 5-year cycle. So the intent before you is simply to replace the revenue in the budget from the Public Health Reserve to continue to fund the position that already exists. We all know that we have substance abuse issues in our community, whether you're talking about alcohol or other drug use. We all know that Rethink has done an outstanding job of improving that within our community. We also heard the coroner talk about heroin as an issue in our community. And we do know that unfortunately the fatalities from heroin overdose are rising in our community over the last couple of years. Funding for this position will do a long way to continue to do the good work that it's been doing, as well as to continue to do some of the work and trying to reverse that trend in terms of heroin overdoses in our community. So I'd urge you to support the funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Ramos, I always appreciate your explanations because of the detail and the directness in your comments. I would like you to explain the $400,000 grant that has been approved for Winnebago County, draw a distinction between the two. And I must admit, I've heard, as representing District 30, several complaints about Rethink and certain positions they've taken. I think some of those complaints are valid, actually. However, so I have a two-part question. The other part is, I assume...
Okay, hold up a minute. Somebody just informed me that that was never seconded. I don't remember. I thought it was. Oh. Okay, it's now seconded. Go ahead, continue.
I assume that the primary function then that has been explained to this board is for the drug use issue, heroin in particular. And I think that is very hard not to support because we're all aware that that needs some attention, obviously. So, in summary, can you draw the distinction between the two grants, the purpose of the two grants, and whether the emphasis on the $125,000 is for heroin and other drugs?
Thank you. I think I can respond to that to some degree, and if there are gaps, then certainly we can ask the health director to fill in. But when he's referring to the $400,000, that actually is a different grant called the Community Transformation Grant Program. And the Public Health Department received $400,000 over a 2-year period to fund that grant program. And essentially what that is doing is funding 1.5 health educator positions to promote healthy lifestyles, education, combating overweight, exercise, that sort of thing in our community. Those two grants cannot cross over. In other words, you cannot use money from the community transportation grant for the drug-free communities program. You cannot take money from the drug-free communities grant program and use it for the community transformation program. If I didn't add, if there's something else to add, Health Director Guerin, please let me know. But there are two different grant programs. They cannot cross between them. That $200,000 a year is used for 1.5 health educator positions and the associated programming that goes along with it. Oh, the second part of your question, I believe, was in regards to the rethink and heroin. The Drug-Free Communities program deals with more than just heroin. I think heroin is going to be a large issue in this community, and it's going to play a large role in it going forward. But when we're talking about the Drug-Free Communities Clinic, we're talking about alcohol, we're talking about smoking, we're talking other substance abuse, and indeed in our community we're talking about heroin as well because of the issue that it has become over the last several years. Thank you.
Supervisor Gabbard.
This is actually for Doug, if I could just get a couple clarifications. You're wanting us to fund this for 1 year only. And number two, I would like the worst scenario if we don't fund this. If that coordinator goes away, how will that affect the people in Winnebago County that need help?
Sure. I'm sorry, the first part of it again?
Is this just funding for 1 year right now?
Right. It's our intent to reapply for funding for another 5-year cycle. This would be very similar to the first time we applied for this funding. We did not receive the award the first time. We applied twice. It's certainly our intent to apply again for that second 5-year cycle, and we certainly hope that we'll be successful. If we don't fund this position, it's a matter of priority. Our options, of course, are to not do something else in the department, not fill another position, not continue on the path that I'm outlining in this budget for improvement after consolidation. If we were just to simply say this is a grant-funded position and we're not going to fund it anymore, then we'd have a significant reduction in our ability to continue to engage the community, on alcohol, heroin, other substances, prescription drug abuse, tobacco. It would likely jeopardize our ability to, put forth a compelling application for the next 5-year cycle as well.
Thank you.
Supervisor Warnke.
I really think we need to add this year. Last week I was in Madison for a CAP meeting, and we met with several of our legislators there, and they have several bills. They are really on top of fighting for this drug thing. Prescription drugs, more regulation. We had Representative Nygaard, who's from Marinette, and I think it takes a lot of guts for what he did, and he stood up and talked to us about how his daughter was hooked on heroin. I mean, he put everything in the front window. And this is an extremely serious problem. It's not only heroin, it's a lot of other things too. So anything that we can do to support fighting this thing, I think we need to do it. So.
Okay, we'll vote by our little iPad. Vote aye if you agree, no if you disagree. That is passed. We're going to take an hour break for lunch. We're halfway through.
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org.